Thousands are being evacuated in the Philippines as the country prepares for a third typhoon in as many weeks.
Experts, including those from State Weather Bureau Pag-asa, are really underscoring the need for early evacuation, as this is part and parcel of the country's disaster preparedness and risk mitigation. The state's volcanology and seismology
Typhoon Vamco has caused extensive damage in the Philippines, flooding many parts of Luzon, the largest and most populated island.
Cyclone to hit the Philippines this year, and the most deadly. It made landfall on Wednesday, but we're only beginning to see the full extent of its devastation. It comes 2 weeks after Typhoon Goni.
On November 11, 2020, Typhoon Ulysses plows into the eastern seaboard of Luzon Island in the Philippines. The eastern, central, the National Capital Region, and northern region of Luzon bore the brunt of the typhoon's heavy rains and strong winds. As it crosses the island of Luzon, it inundated several cities and towns and destroyed crops in most agricultural lands. Several river networks swelled, and dams were on the verge of overflowing. One of the most affected dams was Magat Dam, located in the Cagayan Valley region. On the morning of November 12, all 7 gates of the dam were opened, releasing an enormous amount of water to the Cagayan River. It caused flash floods to several towns and cities, including Tuguegarao City. Why is there a need to open the gates of the dam? What will happen if they chose not to open the gates? And what are the lessons that we should learn from this disaster?
That provides
Investigation Director defends dam operations and points to
pandemic and lockdown issues.
On November 8, a tropical depression was tracked and monitored by the Japan Meteorological Agency, located at 245 kilometers north-northwest of Palau. At 8 p.m. local time, the country's Weather Bureau, Pag-asa, or Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration, announced that the tropical depression has entered the Philippine area of responsibility and named it Ulysses. As Ulysses got closer to southern Luzon, it was upgraded to typhoon status on November 11. At 10:30, it made its first landfall on the island town of Patnanungan, Quezon. Ulysses continued to gain strength and reach its initial peak of intensity, 1-minute sustained winds of 176 kilometers per hour and pressure of 970 millibars. Ulysses made its next 2 landfalls over Quezon Province. The strong winds and intense rainfall were felt over the National Capital Region, forcing residents living along coastline and riverbanks to evacuate. On the morning of November 12, Typhoon Ulysses emerged over the West Philippine Sea, gradually intensified as it tracks towards central Vietnam. Magat Dam is a large rock-filled dam located on Magat River, a major tributary of the Cagayan River. Magat Dam is one of the largest dams in the Philippines. It is a multi-purpose dam that is used primarily for irrigating about 85,000 hectares of agricultural lands, flood control, and power generation through the Magat Hydroelectric Power Plant. A dam operator can usually control the flow of water and the size of impoundment by opening or closing gates. Gates might be opened when water levels are high and the impoundment needs to be lowered, and may be closed if water levels in the impoundment are low. Many dams have authorized levels that they must try to maintain in the impoundment. Overflows of water can cause the walls of dams to erode over time, especially if the area is susceptible to rain and floods. When this happens, the pressure will start to build up at the base, compromising the structural integrity of the dam. When the dam can no longer hold because of the intense pressure, it breaks, releasing all of the impounded water behind and destroys everything from its path. An example of dam failure is the Matthew Dam failure, also known as the Morbi disaster, which is one of the worst dam-related flood disasters in the history of India. It happened on August 11, 1979, at Machu Dam, situated on the Machu River in Gujarat. The excessive rainfall led to a massive flood and eventually to the breakdown of the earthen walls of 4 kilometers long at Machu Dam. It burst, sending a wall of water through the then Morbi town of Gujarat. According to estimates, the number of people killed in the mishap varied from 18,000 and 25,000. Tuguegarao City is the capital of the province of Cagayan and is a major urban center and primary growth center in northeastern Luzon. The city is bordered by Igig to the north, to the west by the Cagayan River and Solana, Peña Blanca to the east, and to the south by Enrile and San Pablo Isabela. The river delta city is almost encapsulated by the Cagayan River on the western and southern side, which explains its northward expansion. The average elevation of Tuguegarao is 65 feet above sea level. Because of the previous tropical cyclones that preceded Ulysses, mountain ranges were not able to absorb as much rainfall as they could have, resulting in a direct runoff, meaning water directly flowed to the reservoir. When the rain hit land, it directly flowed into rivers and reservoirs due to land saturation. Unlike before, the soil absorbs the water, and it takes time before the water flows to the reservoir. The result was a disaster. It flooded numerous towns and cities around the Cagayan River network, including the capital of the region, Tuguegarao City. In the wake of the onslaught of Typhoon Ulysses, people began pointing fingers. Videos and photos of the flooding have begun surfacing on social media, stating that both the national and the local government units didn't perform well in addressing the pertinent needs of those who were directly affected by the typhoon. Before the flooding, the National Irrigation Administration said Sunday it had already warned residents of Cagayan and Isabela of Magat Dam's water release 2 days before Typhoon Ulysses' landfall on November 11. Moreover, questions began emerging after the news broke out that all 7 gates of Magat Dam were opened. What are the factors that necessitate the opening of a dam's gates to release water? What agency is tasked to assess the conditions and make that decision? How long before the spilling of water is the alarm sounded to warn the communities to evacuate? The release of excess water from Magat Dam's reservoir after Typhoon Ulysses dumped heavy rainfall was cited as one of the factors to what local officials called the worst flooding in their area.
It's really Magat Dam that provides or the major cause of the flooding in Cagayan? I don't think so.
The dam operators, National Power Corporation or NPC, and NIA are in charge of providing the dam discharge warning, while Pag-asa provides the flood warning to the communities that are likely to be affected by the release of water from the dams. Knowing the rainfall pattern will allow the dam administrators to effectively manage the stored water and volume of anticipated water inflow. The flood control and warning system, consisting of a network of telemetered gauging stations, warning stations, supervisory control offices of dam sites linked with supervisory centers in the central offices of the National Power Corporation, National Irrigation Administration, and Pag-asa. The telemetering system, which was formulated in 1978, is composed of rain and water level gauge stations installed in selected places in dam watersheds and a radio telecommunication system for transmission of data. On the other hand, dam administrators said it was necessary to release water to prevent Magat Dam from breaking. The inflow of water had elevated the dam's water level. Over the years, other agencies such as NPC and NIA were also tapped to help Pag-asa implement the flood control and warning system. At present, the agencies directly involved in its implementation are the NPC and NIA, who operate and manage the major dams in Luzon, and the Pag-asa through its flood forecasting branch, which operates the flood forecasting and warning systems. There are actions in the flood operations manuals that are common to all the dams. These are the sounding of sirens, sending written messages, and the deployment of personnel and patrol cars to the target areas of the dams. NIA is currently under the scrutiny of the public. There were calls to review operations manuals, and it is about time since the system is outdated. We have to consider that due to climate change, typhoons are getting stronger as the global temperatures of the ocean are getting warmer, brought about by global warming. The Philippines may not be the biggest contributor to greenhouse gases, but according to the 2017 World Risk Report, the Philippines is the third most vulnerable country to climate change in the world. As we face stronger typhoons and more destructive floods, we need to assess our laws. There is a need for stricter laws about conserving and protecting our forests, watersheds, and prohibit mining activities in disaster-prone areas. Furthermore, there is also a need to revise our protocols and procedures in disaster risk reduction and management. There's no way we can't prevent typhoons from crossing the country, but we can mitigate the damages brought about by it. Enough with romanticizing the Filipino resiliency. We're so done with it. Filipinos are resilient because we have no other choice but to move on and start over. While their stories can be inspiring, we shouldn't be blind by the negligence of those in power. As ordinary citizens, we have to instigate accountability processes bottom up. To do that, we must be able to willing to engage in the decision-making processes that affect our daily lives. For what it's worth, every Filipino deserves a better service from the government.
This is part of Barangay Poblacion, a community beside the Magat River in Bustos, Bulacan that has turned into a wasteland. Debris everywhere, mostly broken pieces of wood.
Emergency alerts through text messages have been distributed, but earlier there were difficulties. That's according to the country's disaster agency, especially in areas in Bicol region where
Typhoon Vamco is the 21st cyclone to hit the Philippines this year and the most deadly. It made landfall on Wednesday, but we're only beginning to see the full extent of